I got a call one night from Singapore, and the director of surveillance goes, "We need to get you out here. We've got a guy beating us in Baccarat for a big number." "What's the big number?" He goes, $150 million. I said, "Tony, you'd have to be letting him bet $1 million a hand to get that far out." He goes, "Oh yeah, we are."
What's the most ridiculous thing a casino try to pull off on a customer?
6-5 blackjack.
Yes, yes. Great answer. I'm calling from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm joined with renowned casino expert and game management consultant, Bill Zender. Bill has spent over 40 years in casino management, making decisions at some of the biggest casinos in Las Vegas. He's trained countless casino executives on game protection, written multiple books on advantage play and cheating detection, and is widely considered one of the top experts on table game security. Bill, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good. And what I also could have said that I just found out is you helped fix a game that we were beating for a very long time. So I can't thank you for that, but you were doing your job and we were doing ours.
No, you guys did a good job up there, actually.
Can you share your journey into the casino industry for us?
Yeah, I actually lived in Las Vegas. My parents owned a motel in Las Vegas. And so I went to school at UNLV and I got my degree in hotel. And when I got done, I decided I didn't really want to work for a living. So I decided to become a blackjack dealer. And little did I know that I thought it was like a big party every night, but everybody was partying but me, right? So I started dealing blackjack. I learned roulette and craps on the job. And roulette and baccarat on the job. I went back to school and learned craps. And then I just started working my way up in the industry.
And how did you transition from working in the industry to more of a casino expert?
Well, that all takes time. You have to have, you can't be 25 years old and be an expert, unless you're Steve 40 or something like that. But it just took time. And I actually, while I was working in one of the casinos downtown, a couple of gaming control agents, Nevada gaming control agents, came up and asked me if I'd be interested in joining the gaming control board. They were going to expand and put on more agents, and they wanted some agents with gaming experience. And so I spent a couple of years at Nevada Gaming Control Board, and that was kind of a springboard to things. One of the things that they didn't know at the time is I had a very, very close friend, who I mentioned is Steve 40, and Steve was even though he was younger than me, he was very knowledgeable in gaming, and Steve actually would give me a couple books on cheating. And then give me a deck of cards, and he says, "These cards are marked. When you find those marks, bring the deck back to me. I'll give you a couple more books, and I'll give you another deck of cards to look at."
So he kind of took you under his wing a bit.
Yes, and I was really fortunate because, there was a lot of people in the business that didn't really know what they were doing. And I remember when I was just dealing for a short period of time, one of the dealers, we were at the Royal Inn, which was a break-in casino, and one of the dealers had an audition out on the Strip. So we all trooped down with him, right, to give moral support. And I noticed that this was at the Castaways in the old days. They stood on soft 17 on blackjack. Well, we hit soft 17. So that night when I came to work, I asked the shift boss, I says, "Question, why do we hit soft 17 while on the Strip they stand on soft 17? And he stared at me and his face got all red. And he says, "Zender, just get out of the pit." Right?
Wow.
So his reaction told me that he didn't know, but he was afraid to admit it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Kind of. Nowadays, it should be embarrassing, really.
Yeah. Well, I was playing a high limits room on the Strip maybe 10 years ago, and they had opened, I was going to play 6-deck, but they'd opened up the double deck for some high roller. And so, okay, fine, I'll play double deck. And I'm playing, and after a couple minutes, I get a 16 against a 10. And I said, "Can I surrender?" And the dealer said, "No." Well, pit boss comes over and says, "Sure, you can surrender," and says to the dealer, "It's a sucker play anyway." Mm-hmm. And so I got to play with surrender on double deck for about an hour until surveillance called down and said, "Hey, you can't let him." So the pit boss on a major Strip casino had no idea if a rule is, the average player probably plays surrender so horribly. It's good that they offer it.
Oh, and they do. And just from my experience, when I went into the Aladdin, we decided I had resplit aces. And one thing about resplit aces, you can't make any mistake. Yeah. You get two, you split your aces, you get another one, and you say the dealer's going to look at you and say, did you want to resplit it? And you go, of course I do. So I got rid of resplit aces, but to put something on there in its place, I put in surrender. Because most don't even play it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of them that play it abuse it.
Yes.
And then the ones that play it really, really good is a signal saying, this person here knows how to play blackjack. Maybe you might want to take an extra peek at them. So it really kind of helped me when I put it in there.
Interesting. From our research, you do have some experience with advantage play yourself. Can you share how that fits into your story?
Yeah, you got to remember, I've been in the business a long time, and I broke in deal in 1976. And like the first week I'm dealing, you're just barely getting around the layout and trying to keep the mistakes down. Floorman walks over to me and goes, watch out, there's a card counter in the building. And then he leaves. Well, I've never heard the term before in my life. Card counter, what, has he got a gun or something? Is he going to shoot me? So after that, it kind of piqued my interest in card counting. So I started reading about it. And then I got to a point where then I started asking questions. We actually had one of the dealers at the Royal Inn had taken a class. I can't remember who was putting it on at that time. I think his name was Singer, put some classes on. And so I started to talk to him about it. So little by little, I learned more. And then my buddy Steve Forty said, here, let me help you out. And I got, the book by Lawrence Revere, Blackjack is a Business. And then it all started to kind of come together. So that's how I got started doing that stuff.
I don't know if you're able, it's fine if you can't, but are you able to tell the story of getting backed off for shuffle tracking?
Oh, for shuffle tracking, I'm trying to think about that one now.
I think it might have been at Jerry's Nugget.
Yeah, well, that wasn't shuffle tracking.
Oh.
That was something a little bit different, but it's a legal technique.
Yeah.
Okay? And basically what we're doing is a riffle cut. Now, what you did in the old days is you reached down and actually cut the deck with your hand. So they're telling you, cut the deck with your hand. So what I'd do is I'd reach down, pick up the deck, and as I cut it, I'd riffle 2 cards down and finish the cut. When I lifted it up, my partner would see what the card was. I riffled down 2 cards, I finished the cut, he transferred it.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the floorman didn't know. He wasn't sure what we were doing. The casino manager came over, and the casino manager looked at it and said, well, these guys are up to no good, and he backed us off. And to tell the whole story, okay? So he backs us off. A couple years later, I'm a casino manager now at the Maxim. And I'm watching this guy's play, and my graveyard shift boss comes in, and I said, hey, Mike, if you get it, his name is Mike Phillips, and he used to play, he was one of the guys on the table with me. Mike, if you get a chance, keep an eye on this guy. And he starts laughing. And I go, what? He goes, don't you know who that is? I go, no. He goes, that's Mike Sherman. Mike Sherman was casino manager at Jerry's Nugget at the time, right? And I says, he's the guy that backed us off? Yeah. So I walked over there and go, you are out of here. He went, why? He says, yeah. So it was like I got even with the guy at that point.
Funny. That's so funny. What are the biggest changes you've seen to card counting over the years?
Oh, changes. Well, of course, when I was playing, I started playing serious in 1983. Up to that point, I would just go out and play a little bit here and there. And so we were always attacked single decks and maybe ever occasionally a double deck game. And we were looking for deep penetration single deck games, which you could find in those days. And there was all 3-2 payouts. We didn't have to worry about this 6-5. Well, nowadays, to get a playable game, you have to play against at least a 6-deck shoe. Well, the single deck games are rendered really unplayable because of 6-5. Double deck games are a joke now too. So it's what you're doing. The challenges of card counting now is you have to go after more cards. Now it shouldn't matter because of the fact you have to use a true count conversion. So that's about the only challenge. I still see where you have beatable games in the casinos, and I do work throughout the country, so I see there's beatable games out there right now.
What about how casino operators are handling card counters? Do you think it's gotten more aggressive, less aggressive, same?
Well, we have the stupidity level. And the stupidity level is, and I'm saying that as basically working in the card industry, in the casino industry. And what they did, the stupidity is that they're still playing guess. It's like instead of using, charting or counting a person down or studying, they use the 8-ball. Is this guy counting cards? Oh, no, we'll tell you later, kind of thing. So I still catch them cutting the shoes in half on people and stuff like that. I think in general that the education level is coming up. And I hope that I'm kind of I know you don't like this, but I hope that I'm more of an inspiration to these casinos to start to understand this. Because like I said, I had an article that I wrote a few years ago called that there's millions of dollars lost in the casino industry to card counting, but it's not the guy at the table that is doing it. So the casinos cost themselves way more money than all the professional level card counters in the United States.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit more? How?
I'm in town right now to do some. I got 2 sessions at the World Game Protection Conference, and yesterday I did one on investigating big winners. Players are big winners. And we talked about deck penetration and what your minimum bet spread requirements would have to be for a professional level card counter. So I used cutting off one deck, cutting off a deck and a half, and cutting off 2 decks. When I cut off one deck, you have more positive hands. So you got like 23 out of 100 positive hands. So your bet spread doesn't have to be as wide. Where you cut off a deck in half, you get about 20 positive hands. You cut off 2 decks, you only have about 17 positive hands. So you have to have a bigger bet spread. And then I always caution these people, say, right now you're looking to say, we should be cutting off 2 decks. But you don't. What you want to do is you want to cut off less decks. Because the more you deal, the more cards you deal out, the more decisions you get. The more decisions you get, the more revenue potential you'll have as a house. And there's not that many people in the country that can beat the casinos in the long term. So do you want to restrict your revenue potential because you're worried about this many people? Or do you want to go ahead and deal the masses this many people? And one thing I add, and I hope I'm not getting too verbose here, is that when I get a question, what did you do at the Aladdin back in the 90s, Bill? Well, when I walked in the Aladdin, we were cutting off 2 out of 6 decks. Dealing out 4 decks, cut off 2. I changed it. We cut off 26 cards. We dealt out 5.5 decks. I treated all the card counters that were in there on a case-by-case basis. But we still made more money and had higher hold percentages than ever before.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that the Aladdin actually did really well, taking a counterintuitive approach. These casinos, they're so paranoid, so paranoid about people, and they don't understand the win rates, Yeah, you can make good money as a card counter, but they see someone using some tiny bet spread and they think this person's going to be making $1,000 an hour. And I remember I spoke at the World Gaming Protection Conference a decade ago, and I did the math of our team that won $3.2 million, and we cost surveillance departments about the same cost as their coffee, $3 a day, nationwide, when they're spending so much money to cash these card counters. These guys won millions, yeah, but you're throwing away tens of millions in all these countermeasures because they're so afraid of these very small group of people. And the fact that you actually did it and proved the point at the Aladdin is really impressive.
Well, when I went in there, we actually brought out of bankruptcy. And I had been experimenting for years in smaller casinos about deeper deck penetration and the rest of this, trying to get the hands out. And what I do today, even today when I teach classes, I teach at UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, and also Oklahoma State University. And I stress 2 things. I said, get the hands out and good customer service. And good customer service, keep the people at the game longer. Get the hands out. Get as many hands out as you can in all games, and you'll make more money at the end of the year. And I've actually had several students get back to me and say, you know what? We listened to you. We did that, and you were correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they understand the EV of it at all. That you could have a card counter that's perfect, and they're using a bet spread, and they might be making $50 an hour. Then the guy next to him is flat betting below basic strategy skill level, and they're making the casino $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And this guy, they're like, oh yeah, they're fine. This guy, get him out of here, treat him like garbage. Yeah. It's like, it's the two sides of the same thing. They're just freaking out about one and then comfortable with the other.
Like, I don't like some of the direction what some of the casinos are taking with the 6-5 and the 000 wheel and this, because what the casino industry provides is entertainment for adult people. And if you don't have that entertainment level, if you lose your money too fast, you're not going to come back in there. And everybody thinks, well, I'm competing against that casino and that casino. No. You are competing against those other casinos, but you're competing against nightclubs and dance clubs and sporting events and movie theaters, because the people are spending the entertainment dollar. And I know you got some hard players, right? But a majority of the people walk through the door, whether they're playing table games or playing slots, that's their entertainment dollar. And so you have to give them a bang for their buck.
Yeah, if they're not getting a good bang for their buck, they'll go to the nightclub or whatever. Or what I fear is the person that keeps coming back, they're maybe not the customer you want to be. They've got a problem, if they don't care, as opposed to the entertainment value.
Well, you said that there used to be an old saying in the gaming business. This is back from the 80s and 90s. So we can take a player from the basic gaming program all the way to chapter 11 within 6.5 years.
Wow.
And I said, that's bad, because we, casino business, have a moral obligation to the players to keep them financially healthy. And you need to, if you've got someone that's really is having a problem, you need to take the steps. Problem gambling says here's a literature, but you need to give them the literature. You need to sit down with them, because we do have a moral obligation to these people. Yeah,
I agree. It's hard to get addicted to going to a sporting event or something like that. It's a lot easier, And
I don't know. I watch guys on football games get a little crazy.
Rather than having to worry about the deck penetration decision, why don't casinos just install CSMs at all the tables?
Put the continuous shuffle machines out there? Yeah. Well, there's two out there right now. It's 1-6 shuffle machine and another one called the Shuffle Star. And if you go into a casino like Resorts World, which is one of the bigger ones now in Las Vegas, all the games on the main floor are dealt with a continuous shuffle machine. And personally, I like them. And the reason why is you get more hands out with continuous shuffle machine than you do with definitely with a hand shuffle, but then even over the multiple deck, the MD shuffle machines. So I'm surprised that more people don't want to do that. We still have a lot of casino people that say, well, my players don't like those. So there's still a little bit of a pushback from the general public, but I think eventually you'll see a majority of the games will be dealt with a continuous shuffle machine.
Well, I encourage people to keep saying we don't like those. Let's not, let's have a fair fight.
Yeah. No, I'm a purist. And I think that the game should be, I think one of the major attractions with Blackjack, because the queen of the casino at one time was craps, but the major attraction to Blackjack was it could be beaten. Right? A small percentage of people can beat it, and that's the ones that really work hard and study.
Yeah.
But still, the idea, the perception you can beat the game, it's a casino game, you could beat it if you try it and work hard enough, was an attraction.
Shifting gears, what's the largest amount you've seen someone winning? They bring you in as a consultant to say, what are they doing? And it was just luck.
You're going to like this one. It wasn't in Blackjack, though. It was in Baccarat. And in Baccarat, I got a call one night from Singapore, Marina Bay Sands. And the director of surveillance called me up. He says, we need to get you out here. And I said, what do you got? And he says, we've got a guy beating us in Baccarat for a big number. What's the big number? He goes, $150 million. And I rolled my eyes. I said, Tony, you'd have to be letting them bet $1 million a hand to get that far out. He said, oh, yeah, we are. We're at $1 million a hand. And, of course, it's Singapore money, but Singapore money is like in parity with what the Canadian dollar is, right? So the thing is that, yeah, but by the time I got out there, got through all the red tape to get out there, he was only winning $30 million.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it was just luck.
And I looked at numbers of shoes, and it was, he's just luck. There's no pattern, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
What about the other side where it was maybe not card king, but some vulnerability that it was a large amount before it got figured out?
Are we talking advantage play or cheating?
No. Oh, okay. Good. Let's do both, but let's start with advantage play.
Advantage play. To tell you the truth, and I'm not going to throw this back at you, but probably the largest group wherever I came in and analyze it where they've been beating the casino for money was the group that you guys, the Holy Rollers, had up at, and that was the casino was beside themselves because they didn't know. And so what they ended up doing was I got up there, showed these guys how to chart the play, and then they found that you had like 6 of your players up there, and that they ended up, I think, backing them all off. So
yeah, it happened all at once, and
that was an advantage play. Cheating was also in Singapore, where they broke into a cabinet, a card cabinet, and it was a decorative card cabinet on the floor, right? Cameras, you got a lot of cameras, right? Expensive lock, the whole bit. But they figured out how to get the key to get into it. They opened it up, took a carrier out, took it up to their rooms, cracked the carrier open enough to where they didn't break the latch, and got in there with a camera and recorded the index corners on all those cards. Well, not all of them, about 400 of them. Put it back together again, put it back in the podium. And about 15 hours later, randomly, that carrier came out, went on a table, and they beat the game for $4 million.
Wow. So they knew the order of the cards coming out.
And it was really kind of an interesting case because I knew about it from the casino people, but I was hired by the Singapore police as the expert on that case. And I kept going over the play chart. And matter of fact, I didn't use the play chart that they had, a play chart I put together. We used the one that the defense attorneys put together, so there would be no question. And I went over the play chart over and over and over and over again, and I figured out how they did it. And basically what they did was they knew the sequence. So they would look at the game and see the cards on the table, go in the bathroom, get on the phone, tell them what they saw, what the game number was. And then and then these guys would analyze it and say, okay, game number 22, bet the opposite of the last winner. What they were looking for was runs in a row. So what they would do is say, bet the last winner. Well, last winner was, or bet against the last winner. Last winner was a bank. They bet the player, and what they were told was keep betting on the player until it loses. Once it loses, and back off, and then we'll give you another game. And so what it looks like is that they're following the shoe. Baccarat is really hard to figure out, but they kept doing this several times during that shoe, and that's how we figured out, and we actually got conviction on those guys.
That's incredible. They don't shuffle the cards;
they're pre-shuffled. Now they do. Now they do. What they do is they take it out of the carrier. Now they're pre-shuffled still. They bring the carrier to the table, crack it up, and put it through an empty shuffle machine.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Are there any casinos that you feel like are a shining example of how a casino should be run?
Usually it's not the casino or the casino company. It's usually the casino individual, whoever's running the games at the time. If they're knowledgeable, they'll run the games better. And it's a balance about offering a game that's playable, offering a game that they can make enough revenue off of. Okay, you want to bring you don't want the revenue, you don't want the house advantage too low, but you don't want it too high. And this is like a measurement study where I figured on Blackjack, anytime you get the house advantage up to about 2 3/4% on the average bet, then what they're doing is they're actually going to have diminishing returns. So up to that point, you can increase your win, but there's a point where it diminishes.
And so is that assuming an average player's skill level, not basic strategy?
Yes, it is. And I did a study a few years ago, over 10 years ago, where we watched players at 7 different casinos in North America and recorded the mistakes they made. It was on a 6-deck game. Recorded the mistakes they made, put the value to it. I used that numbers out of Donald Schlesinger's book, right? And so I did put the mistake numbers to it, and we figured out what it was per so many hands. And it comes out that the average player in North America, average player, gives back about 83 cents per every $100 that they wager, or series of bets equaling 100. So that's 0.83 increase in house advantage. If you're a high limit player, you usually know more about the game, and they're usually somewhere give back is between 0.3 and 0.6 on that one. If you go and look at, like I had the MGM study for anybody who bet $99 and under, and it was quite high. Now, those are the people who are walking around with the yard glass full of margaritas, okay? And they're just there to have a good time. And they were giving back about over $1, giving like $1.20 per 100 or 1.2%. So it really has a lot to do. More of the house's advantage is the players' mistakes than it is their really internal rules, unless you get to something crazy like 6-5. So and I tell these guys, that means that if you have a basic strategy player, you still deal to them because you have the advantage. You know, you can't expect to back off the basic strategy player. So
yeah, well, I wish they would be a little more hesitant to back off someone that they think is counting too.
Yeah, well,
but if it's so, you're saying if an average player. Well, that makes sense. The guy that's walking up with their margarita yardstick to a low limit table, then you can give them around a 1% disadvantage, and they'll still be satisfied in the long run. But then you get to maybe a $25 or $50 table, then it's got to be lower. It's got to be around 0.5, 0.6 to still satisfy them.
Well, you know, you hit a major point. And what I do in some of my advanced math classes to some of the casino executives, they'll say, here's what you need to do. What you put in the player rating system right now with our techniques is static. So you just put one, and it's kind of hard to say, well, let's see, we got 0.5% advantage, and they give me back about a buck. It's 1.5. And it's kind of hard to do that because the higher limit players are going to be a lot below that, and some of your lower limit players are going to be above that, right, as far as give back. And so I said, here's an idea. Base it on average bet. And I say maybe anybody bet on 100, 1.5. Anybody over 100 is 1. That includes the rules of the game. So
does that include the side bets too?
No, because what you have to do with the side bets, there's a way of doing this. I show them on an Excel spreadsheet, but you take into consideration the main bet and the side bet. What percentage of the side bet are you betting, in relationship to the main bet? And then you have your house advantage here, and then you have your house advantage there, and you can come up with an adjusted house advantage. But here's the problem. Not everybody bets the side bet. So what you have to do is establish a utilization number. So you have to multiply the people that you saw. Well, you bet 20 on the main bet, 5 on the side bet, but they only did it 15% of the time. So you have to divide that by 15%. So there's a little bit of a process here to be able to establish that. Most casino executives don't want to go through that process.
Yeah. Interesting. Would you say that casino cheating is incredibly rare in today's casino environment?
Yes. And the reason I'm saying that is because of several different things, 3 things. One is the equipment we're using on the table now. For example, when I broke in dealing, we had all hand-pitched games. There's no hand-pitched games anymore, right? They put it in a shoe, and you take the cards out of the dealer's hand, you actually increase your game protection. So what you're doing is procedures one, equipment's another one, and then surveillance is another area. And our surveillance, when I broke in dealing, I made a mistake on a game, and I sweat it for 2 days. I thought the guys in the eye in the sky were going to grab me up, and they were going to bring me dragging into the casino manager's office. And one of the dealers who was more veteran than me, he'd been there like 6 months, said, there are no cameras. You see that window on the wall? Yeah, that's the backside of the casino manager's office. When the casino manager goes home at night, their surveillance system is shut down. So there was no coverage. Well, now we've got cameras, 24/7 over every game. And not only that, the quality now, there's a recording at at least 30 frames a second is what the human eye can see. So the coverage is better. Everything's recording 30 and 15 days. And then training is better now. And I like to pat myself on the back on this one. But the quality training is much better than it used to be, especially for surveillance people. So yeah, the level of cheating has gone down for those factors right there.
And so are you talking about the casinos cheating or players?
Oh, no, you're not talking about. I wrote a book on how to detect casino cheating in blackjack one time because I got sick and tired of answering all these questions from people about, I think I was betting $15 a hand. I was winning. They cheated me. They're not going to put their license in jeopardy to beat you out of your $300 at, $15 to $20 a hand.
So you're talking with the handheld, it's a dealer that would be peaking or something.
But in licensed casinos, it is extremely rare. And if you do find some cheating, it's because the dealer was cheating other players so that they could pay more to their friends or something like that.
Collusion.
But that's even very, very small on this one.
And what about patrons, marking cards or any of that?
Well, that's really reduced again because we're dealing it differently now. I remember I used to pick them up and you could bend them and crimp them and daub them. And now it takes more of an overt act that they're dealing face up. You can still mark cards in the face up game, okay? But it's something that's few and far between. Another thing was really kind of interesting was that Nevada, at one time, Nevada, before 1976, it was a misdemeanor to cheat at gambling. July of 76, they made it a felony. And it's really funny is if you cheated for $5, it's still a felony in Nevada. So that kind of slammed the door in a lot of stuff.
That's amazing. It was a misdemeanor. It's like, hey, here's your little ticket. Try at the next place.
I know a lot of people that they had several of those misdemeanors hanging over their head, and they could care less. So.
That I didn't know about that law change. That explains a lot about kind of the old time casino experience and people that probably they were fine with getting the misdemeanors and keep taking their shots.
That's correct.
You published a book on casino cheating in 1999. Would you say that the tactics that you outline in that book are still relevant today or no?
No. Because they said how to detect casino cheating in blackjack. And a lot of that was old passé stuff. Short decking. It was, doing selective up card, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anchor plays. And no, I would suggest that probably 90% of the stuff in that book you couldn't do anymore, period.
And what's anchor play?
You know what anchor play is? Okay. Anchor play is where they used to get a guy from the casino sitting on third base, and the cards would be marked. So he would see what the dealer got in the hole, and then he would see what the next card was off the top of the deck, and if it would hurt the dealer, he'd take it. If it helped the dealer, he would stand.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So the dealer makes far more hands than he would otherwise.
Now, one of the plays that also can be used against the house, where the players mark the cards and they get a guy on third base betting table minimum, and they get a guy in the center table playing big money. Mm-hmm. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. With newer technology, cameras and all that stuff, have you seen any new sophisticated forms of cheating?
Yeah, optics are really starting to become a little bit crazy. And it's not, I don't see as much in blackjack as I'm seeing it in alternative games. When I say alternative games, that's like Ultimate Texas Hold'em, 3-card poker.
Carnival games.
I hate that term. You know why I hate carnival games, the name? Because people in the casino business, that's just a carnival game. So they don't take the game seriously. But right now, I would suggest that a majority of the advantage players that used to attack blackjack, let me put it this way, advantage players that attack card games were mostly focused on blackjack are now focused on the alternative games. That's why I call it alternative games. In blackjack, we're using a shuffle machine now, so the need to shuffle track is almost non-existent, or I should say the opportunity to shuffle track is almost non-existent. And the rest of it is well, I don't think it's really something that's going to hit blackjack, but it's something where you can use it for other games. So.
Okay, so optics meaning cameras?
Cameras, smart glasses.
Okay.
It's really funny. They had a guy with smart glasses on. He didn't use them here. He put them down on the table.
Interesting.
On a pitch game.
Yeah.
So you know what he's doing on the pitch game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. What is the chain of command for how they figure out what types of games and rules to offer?
A lot of it's copycat stuff, right? And so whatever the other guy's doing, they want to copy them. And the games you put on the floor should be intelligent casino manager puts the games on the floor based on the market requirements. What do the people need? He throws in alternative games, so that gives them a gaming alternative, right? How many of the major games, like the main games like blackjack and roulette and craps? It used to be blackjack, roulette, and craps 95% of all the table games. Now they're like blackjack's down right now even under 50% of the games, and that was always the queen of the casino, so to speak. What I always tell people when they want to put a side bet in, side bets are interesting. It says, I found out at one point, it was, why did you choose a side bet? It turns out that the salesperson was a little bit more convincing, and she was cute. So the thing is they say, okay, what about your customers? What are you trying to establish here? So a lot of them are now starting to take a more of a sophisticated, strategic look at side bets, okay? What about the table games? What games are you going to offer? Unfortunately, went through a period, and I still think it's out there, where the games with the higher house advantage but lower average bet have a higher hold percentage, and that seems what they want to go for because they want to jack that hold percentage up. And I explained this over and over again, that the power bill is not paid by the whole percentage, it's paid by the dollars won on the table. And in the old days, Benny Binion at the Horseshoe Club, they had the single deck games. They held 10%. But Benny won all the money. At least people would rather hold 20% and win only a fraction of the money.
Yeah.
So a lot of the casinos need to refocus on what they really want to do.
Yeah, it's surprising to me that maybe just it seems like a lack of business savvy by the people. It's short-sighted, and you'd think that there'd be a little bit more. I'm surprised you have to point this out to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised that too. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who make the decisions in gaming now are non-gaming people. So they don't have a background, don't have the formal background in it. A lot of them come out of finance and accounting. And so what's the measuring stick? Hold percentage. And hold percentage is the worst measuring stick you could use.
Interesting. How has technology impacted surveillance over the years?
Well, that's easy. That's their equipment. And, they get the ability to record more. They've got the ability to see more. There's more cameras on the floor now than there's, of course, ever been. I mean, I remember when I took over as casino manager, it was in the Maxim in 1989, we had 3 PTZ cameras that cover 25 table games.
Wow. And
only 2 of them recorded. So nowadays, every game has almost got 3 or 4 cameras crisscrossing, and then you have the PTZs that you can use. And they got the 365 cameras, which are like a bug eye where you can see anywhere and you can even look back in memory. So the big thing is technology. And then, of course, in the old days when we had the videotapes, so if you're my buddy and you're on the floor and you're gonna cheat a game, all you have to do is go over there and stop the recording. And they can't do that anymore. Because with the hard drives, they have if a camera goes out, you have a failover system. I should say camera. But if for some reason recording on that game went out, it fails over, so it goes over and records on another hard drive. So there's no way I can shut it off. So it's a big difference there.
That's interesting. What's the most ridiculous thing you've heard of a casino try to pull off on a customer?
The most ridiculous? I don't have to think about that one. My God. 6-5 blackjack.
Yes. Yes. Great answer. Perfect answer.
It's a greed factor is what it is. That's the most ridiculous thing.
You heard it here, folks. Casino games expert says 6-5 is bad for casinos.
It was funny. I had a friend of mine work for Harrah's years ago. And basically, the first casino to have 6-5 was the Flamingo. It was right before the millennium, back in the 90s, right? Like end of the 90s. And they did it, believe it or not, to get around Howard Grossman's super fun blackjack's patent, okay? And so they put the 6-5 in. So I had a friend of mine who was working at Harrah's. And he says, man, these people at Harrah's are brilliant. They decided to take 50-cent pieces off all their blackjack games. And he says, you know what that does? We figure it saves the whole corporation $1 million a year because instead of paying a $25 blackjack, instead of paying $37.50, we only pay $37. I says, well, I got a better idea for you. Why don't you just take the dollars off too? And then you can pay $35 for a $25. I go, no, wait. Why don't you pay 6-5? Then you only have to pay $30 for a $25 blackjack. So this gives you an idea how stupid this thing can get after a while.
Yeah. Well, let's go the other extreme. What's the most ridiculous thing you've seen a player try to pull off?
Oh, please. God, that's no. You mean trying to beat the game or just being crazy?
Whichever you prefer.
Well, I was working at Bally's one time, okay? And I'm just going to tell you this story. But they had this woman that was playing in town, a Vietnamese woman named, we called her the Dragon Lady. I'm not going to tell you what her real name was. And the Dragon Lady had a reputation. So I started working at Bally's. And it was right after Bally's bought the MGM Grand, which became Bally's, which is now the Horseshoe on the Strip. And so I've got these two executives standing next to me, or like really prim and proper. And I look up and I go, oh, the Dragon Lady's here. And the one guy goes, well, who's the Dragon Lady? I said, you see that little Vietnamese woman there? He goes, yeah. So the last time I saw her, she had her legs wrapped around the shift manager at the Horseshoe Club, and she was beating him in the head. And so I walked up and go, hi, and I'm not going to tell her name. I didn't call her Dragon Lady, but let's just call her Kim. Hi, Kim. How are you? Oh, how are you? I says, okay, you can play here, but this is it, okay? No tearing the cards, no spitting at the dealer, no throwing chips at the dealer. And all this time she's nodding, okay. No urinating on the floor. So about this time I went down a whole list of things and told her not to. She's okay. So I turned around and I looked at these two guys and their eyes were this big. So they were well, her family's got a lot of money, so you might be able to beat her out of some bucks. And I think they beat her out of, she was in there, I think they beat her out of about $30,000. So.
Wow. What about someone trying to beat a game?
I'll tell you a little story about some cheating.
Yeah.
And this happened at, and I think it was the Excalibur in Las Vegas, years and years ago. They had a double-deck game. And they had some guys in town that were using a shiner. Now, a shiner is like a mirror, and you hold it down on the side of the table, and you look at it, and you get the dealer's hole card. You sit on third base, and when the dealer delivers their hole card, you can see it. If I can get down and I can see the card with my eye, that's fine. That's an advantage play. But if I use a device, it becomes cheating. So they had these guys that were, this team that was coming in and playing. But two of the guys in this team were Golden Glove boxers.
Wow.
So what they did is they act as outside security. So security went up to grab this guy. They would start pounding him, right? Gaming knew about it. So gaming set up. They were coming into the Excalibur. Gaming set up on them. And just as they started to do this and started to play, the gaming agents surrounded them to grab them up. and it was, let me say it easy, what's politically correct? Giant ass-kicking contest. The table goes over, chips go everywhere, right? And so finally, they got all these guys. The problem was the big player that was at the table, they forgot to put somebody assigned to the big player, and he walked out the door.
Unbelievable.
But they grabbed all these guys up. When you reviewed the videotape, the table behind him, of course, when the fighting starts and the table goes over, the people on the table, there's a husband and wife, they get up and leave, right? Get away from it because they get their backs to this fight. A guy on a table sees them get up, reaches over and picks up their chips and walks away. So you had an opportunist in there on top of it.
Wow, everybody's taking a shot.
Yeah, so you're wide open when you ask me that question. So.
Oh, wow. Given that it's 2025, there are still casinos in Las Vegas that are refusing a $3,000 cash out if the patron doesn't show ID.
Yes, and that has to do with anti-money laundering, and that's not the state or the casinos, that's the federal government.
For $3,000. Yes,
what they're doing is you have to report any transaction $10,000 or more. And they look at casinos, government looks at casinos as financial institutions. So casinos have to follow the same regulations that a bank has to follow. Now, you say, well, that $3,000 is way below the $10,000 threshold. But what the federal government demands is that you keep tracking the players. And because some of the casinos have gotten in trouble by not tracking the players, a lot of the casinos have said $3,000, we need to see ID. Some of them, even in the card room casino I was at Artichoke Joe's, we actually tracked $2,000. So we went down that low. And so the thing is that that way it forces the casino to check for IDs. We also do other things that if we've got a person who's playing good money, the federal government says we need to know our players. And so we have to actually do backgrounds on our players. We don't, do direct backgrounds, but we'll go and use LexisNexis. We'll even use Google Earth to look and see where their house is and what they've got. But we have to know our customer. And I always said we're doing the federal government's work for them, but that's what they insist us to do.
Wow.
So there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. It has nothing to do with the player. It has to do with the fact that it's a basic based on the anti-money laundering laws.
And I know your player stuff, that's really big over in Europe, I believe. That they
more in Asia.
Oh, okay.
More in Asia.
Wow.
I hate to say that because I'm not really up on what they're doing in Europe, but all the major industrial countries in the world follow basically the same regulations that we have here in the United States. They call it something a little bit different. Even Canada does almost identical to what the United States does.
Weren't you saying before recording that there was a casino, it was $100 if you bought in for more than that, you had to show a receipt?
Well, that was up in British Columbia. British Columbia had a situation where they had a runaway problem with anti-money laundering and in the Canadian government. They were noting all these people in their buy-ins, but they weren't going through it and doing anything about it, right? And it was everybody's problem. So it got to a point where what they said is if a person came in, even bought in for $100 on the game, they had to show a withdrawal slip from a bank, in that area. So you couldn't buy in for anything unless you showed the slip.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, you could have cash at home, and then you'd have to go to the bank.
You have to go to the bank, deposit it, and then withdraw it, but you couldn't do it the same day. They wouldn't let you do it the same day. You had to put it in there.
Wow.
So what they were trying to do is the Canadian government was trying to force you to record it, put it in the system and record it. They didn't want anybody walking around with a bunch of cash. Well, gamblers.
Yeah. Are there any upcoming trends in the casino industry that you think will revolutionize it?
Not really. I think what you're doing is right now you're seeing a lot of movement to online gaming and then on online sports betting. And so it's moving out of the brick and mortar and more into the digital world. And of course, anytime you do that, what you're doing is you've got more people that can bet from their living room.
From their bed.
Yeah, for that matter. And so the thing I'm seeing is that there's an increase in handle, increase in revenue, also an increase in problem gambling. So there's just a lot of different things. As far as brick and mortars, I don't really see that. I see where in brick and mortars there's technology is moving up in slots, not so much in table games.
When you consult with casinos, how do you tell them to handle card counters, how to treat them?
I did things a little bit differently, and I always recommend that. And I've had that come up in classes. What would you do? And if I ask a casino person, what do you do? Well, we cut the shoe in half. I said, you know that you're sending a message saying that we don't know what we're doing. And he says, but this is what I would do. So I get the Aladdin. Let's say that you came in the Aladdin you were playing, and I've watched you, and I know that you're counting cards. So I walk up to you and I say, Mr. Jones, my name is Bill Zender. Could I talk to you off the table? Here, grab your chips. Come over here. I want to talk to you. And get you away from the table. And I say that I've been watching your play. You're a real good player. I'd rather you didn't play Blackjack here anymore. And you probably would say to me, but I don't understand. And I go, well, I used to play in a professional level, so I know what you're doing. I appreciate your skill level, but I'd rather you didn't play here. And usually I got a little bit more pushback. Well, I still don't know what you're talking about. I go, okay, I'm watching you play. I want you to make a big bet. You're standing on 16 versus a 10, but when you have a small bet up, you're hitting it. I want you to have a big bet up, and you took insurance on that hand, but you didn't take insurance on any other hand. So I'll bring out a couple plays like that, right? And after about 4 or 5 plays, I go, oh, okay, I get it. I'll see you. And that's how I would handle it. But I'm kind of different, right? Because I've got the experience, I got the background. But a lot of places they do is they back you off. They just say, push your money back. You can't play here anymore without any explanation. So.
And then who knows, that person could spend it at the craps table or the sports book or.
Well, if they're a professional level card counter, no.
Yeah.
But there's so many people have been misdiagnosed, and everybody wants to talk about Griffin and OSN and the rest of these guys, right? And that's where you go if you want to see if somebody's in there, see if they're and they lump card counters in with advantage players, which is not really what it should be. But because you hear this, oh, he's an advantage player. Well, what does he do? Is he shovel track or is he a whole card player? But nobody wants to tell you that, when you go in those systems. But I want to say one thing, that at one point with Griffin, when back in the old days, in the Griffin book, half the people that were in there for card counting weren't card counters. And what happens is the casino they're playing in, let's say they beat him, they say, he's a card counter, back him off, and then Griffin comes in and they give him the picture and say, the guy's a card counter. And, Griffin got in trouble was with Mike Russo and James Grosjean. Is that what they used to do is they said, okay, we're putting advantage players, card counters, legal technique people in with cheaters. So they would put down that he was a card counter, could be using a computer. He's a shuffle track, could be whole card playing or something like that. So they put the 2 in there. So what they did was, it could be playing whole card, but could be marked cards. Mm-hmm. And they went in, Caesars went in and found Russo in the book, and it said that. Could be getting a whole card, could be marked cards. And that's when Grosjean and Russo got popped at Caesar's Palace. Mm-hmm. So the start of it was that book, was what they put in those notations. And I used to tell one of the Griffin agents, Andy Anderson, I said, if you tell me a guy is a pass poster in roulette, I believe you. If you tell me a guy is a dice slider in craps, I'll believe you. But when you tell me somebody's a card counter, I have to make sure myself, because you're getting that information from people who probably have no idea what they're looking at. Mm.
And they bankrupt Griffin, didn't they?
Yeah. Beverly Griffin is just starting to talk to me now. I testified as an expert in that case.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was, she's still a little pissed at me.
Can you explain for people what happened to those two players?
Well, what Russo and Grosjean were doing was they were playing on 3-card poker. And they were actually getting a deal as whole card. And that wasn't, I'm going to explain that to you. That was before the shuffle machine. So what they were doing is hand shuffling it, and then the guy was pitching. So we were trying to get a card. Well, they brought a guy in to deal. It was a change of shift. They spent 5 minutes showing him how to deal the game. And he started to deal. And Russo notices that when he comes around, he can see all 3 of the cards. So instead of like if you see a 1-card, 3-card poker, it's about 3% gain. We're talking, I don't even know the number. I guess like in the 30s%. So they started playing, and they looked up Russo. Somebody came by and saw that Russo had won a bunch of money. So they saw his picture in the Griffin book, and it said possible mark card play. The ship boss went over, picked the cards up, looked at them in the discard rack, and saw a couple bent cards. So basically, to make a long story short, they picked him up for card marking. And that wasn't what it was. It was that they were playing a weak dealer. And so things really kind of escalated from there. James Grosjean, who's basically considered one of the smartest guys in the United States, spent several days in county lockup because he didn't have any ID on him. So it was a bunch of things that were done completely wrong. They were arrested, but they had the charges dropped against them. Then they went ahead and they filed charges against both Caesars and Griffin. And I was approached by Bob Necessi and their attorney, and I actually testified in the court as an expert for them because it was wrong. They were wronged. I've actually, people in the industry said, what did you represent these? And they would call them scumbags. And I says, well, the scumbag you're talking about is probably one of the smartest guys in the United States. But they were wrong. The casinos were wrong to do that. And as much as I'm on the pro casino side, there are ways to handle situations, and there's not ways to handle situations.
I know it's rare, but I have friends, card counters, that have been detained unlawfully. Why do you think this stuff still happens?
Ignorance. And, I had a long talk with Bob Necessian about this. Bob and I are kind of buddies. And he had shown me a video of a guy who was detained for card counting. And when he was walking down the hallway, all of a sudden, because you can't hear the sound, security guard turned around and punched him in the gut. Right? That's a lawsuit, and that's got to be a collection. Right? And the thing is that it's ignorance. They're not criminals. You're not supposed to do this. These people are intelligent people. They worked really hard to get to this position that they're at. So there's two. Again, I tell these guys all the time, there's 2 ways to beat you. One is on the table, and the other is a court of law.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your wisdom, and thank you for being very human towards both sides. I understand casinos, but also being very human towards us card counters and advantage players. And people that want to learn more can check out Card Counting for the Casino Executive, Advantage Play for the Casino Executive, Casino-ology, Casino-ology 2, probably a lot more.
There you go. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.